is what you do.
Okay.
It's kind of confusing only because all the questions they ask.
Yeah. Oh, oh.
Only weird thing is all the questions are present tense, which is weird considering that I'm sure the instructor knew that we'd have to interview someone who did something in the past.
Okay.
Well, except for I guess if some of the young kids found someone who did the.
Let me see what
Black
you
Lives
have
Matter.
for your questions first, so I'll kind of be prepared.
Biggest thing, it's a social movements course. So last week we did. I mean, we're doing an 18-week course in 6 weeks. So,
Okay.
but so last week everything we did was on racial and ethnic movements,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I'm kind of focusing on with you. And then like this week we're focused on women's movements, and we'll do gay rights and movements like that next week.
Okay. Okay. Those make sense. So I can, yeah. Oh, you got some more over there. Okay. Got it. Have you started your thing
Yeah, it's on, but
yet? Okay.
I'll be able to edit it later if I need to.
Okay.
It always seems funny asking questions I know the answer to. Can you tell me your name and what you did for a living?
My name is Gwendolyn Lawton, and I basically was an educator. I'm retired now. I had several years teaching in Catholic schools in Florida and in California.
I can know that.
Then, from there, I came to California. I taught for 2 years in California, and I left there, and for 3 years I was a stockbroker, but I didn't like that. Made more money than I'll ever make teaching, but it was not working for a general feeling of everyone. You basically worked for yourself, so it was a selfish kind of career. Then I came back into teaching. I taught for I taught at, I started the Young Mothers Program in Vallejo because they used to bus their kids to Fairfield, the Young Mothers, so I started the program there. I also wrote the science curriculum for the adult school. Then I came to Fairfield School District and I taught for about 5 years. Then I became an assistant principal at a high school. Later I became a principal at an elementary school. Then I opened a new high school, and from there I went to student services. So my last 7 years was spent in pupil services, more so working on all aspects.
I never knew half of that, especially like the Catholic school part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what type of societal change did you get involved in?
Many societal changes. Well, I'm a child of the 60s. When I was in high school, we were very active in social change for voters' rights. There were some states where blacks couldn't vote, or they made it very hard for them to vote by giving them poll tests. So that was one. But see, we did a lot of sit-ins and civil rights acts, but you had to go to training. We went to training because, and I was with the NAACP youth group, We had to go to training because we had to agree that if someone spit on you, hit you, slapped you, you were not to retaliate. So, but you had to keep eye contact with them. And that was usually the one thing that they would do. I didn't have anyone beating up on me or anything, but that's why your grandfather did not do any sit-ins or something, because he said if somebody hit him, he would hit them back. So from there, I went to college, and right as they passed the Voting Act in 1965, and students were really, we had the busing, and it just was so much stuff happening, especially on college campuses. But there's something else that I grew up with. My mother and my aunt were educators, and they were the group that got college degrees and everything, and they were taught that you got a college degree, others didn't. So you had to come back and give back to the community. So I grew up with a mother and an aunt who was always working on something to help kids. My brother and I figured out we never had an old bike, because what my mother would do is if we were getting a new bike, our bikes got taken to the bicycle shop. She had them refinished, repainted, new seats, and they were given to some families that couldn't afford them. So it was stuff like that. I know she fed kids, and stuff like that. So we grew up in an environment where we actually had to volunteer and do stuff in the community. So from there, I went to, when I was in college, of course, I participated in sit-ins, things like that, but it was a tough environment because, number one, in some colleges, kids got arrested. In the state of Florida, what they did, they had people taking pictures all the time, FBI, CIA, and all, and they would take pictures. And then they passed a law. Any students who were on a scholarship and participated in any sit-ins or something like that, they would lose their scholarship. So academically, I did not, but listened to lots of speakers that came to our campus. Stokely Carmichael came to our campus, and we were, a day or so before, our president was told by the Board of Regents that he couldn't be there speaking on our campus. So they closed down the auditorium. That was always open because students would go in there to practice or whatever, musicians and everything. So he was in the middle of our set, in the middle of where the dorms and all was, speaking from a car. And one student said, "Oh no," to the auditorium. So we looked up on the second floor, a window was open. So a guy pushed him up, went in, opened the door, we all went in. It was our college professors, it was students, everything. And Stokely went up on stage and he talked. Photographers were there, cameramen, and he said, you have to watch out because they'll turn their cameras on and take part of your words, turn it off, and turn it back on and take another part. And the students wanted to put all of the reporters out, and he said, "No, this is America, it's free speech." So from there, and we all went in and sat down and listened to the man, so just a normal, orderly event. That night when I got back to the dorm later, phones are ringing off the hook, and there weren't no cell phones and all like that. There was a phone on each floor dorm. They'd say, "Your mom's calling," whatever. All these parents were calling because they heard that there was a riot on Florida A&M's campus. There wasn't any riot, but that's what the news said. So, I'm spending a lot of time on that one question, huh?
Oh no, you're fine.
Okay,
Trust me, Dave. We want to get expansion on everything anyway. So
okay, so from there, well, while I was in college, I was I was president of Newman's Club. That's the Catholic Leadership Club. So we were doing stuff in our community and in areas that did not have a lot of stuff. Then I joined my sorority at that time, over 50-something years ago now, and what we did on Saturdays, we would go to outside of Tallahassee. There were still plantations. They were, I guess, what they called them then was migrant work or whatever. But we would tutor the kids on Saturdays because a lot of these kids did not go to school. And my roommate was a nursing major, and she had all of these classes that go to be on the hospital. We had a hospital on campus. And we would go and volunteer in the children's ward because there wasn't enough nurses to make sure they feed the kids and stuff, especially toddlers and all like that, and the parents are working. So we would go and feed the little kids during the times that they had their meals. So after I got out of college, I've always been, number one, committed to helping kids. Number two, helping my community. And number three, always doing what's right. So I've joined a few other organizations since then because I'm at the Links also. And what we do is work in the community. So you choose. I've been working in national trends and services. So yesterday I was in a motorcade where there were over 40 groups involved, and we set up, we have the Census 20 bag. Inside the census bag, we had information for voting and for filling out the census. We gave face masks and sanitizer, hand sanitizers. And we got boxes of food from the food bank. So we met at St. Stephen's Church. After that, after meeting at St. Stephen's Church and passing out stuff there were over 60, 70 cars involved. There were every fraternity and sorority, National Council of Negro Women, Hispanic groups, white groups. We had signs in all languages, and we put them on our car. We had Vietnamese, the whole 9 yards. And we, from St. Stephen's, we drove to Lee Bell Park. And the Omega fraternity, they had their overhanging tent, and they were giving out information at that park and food. And from there, we went to the Mexican meat market on Texas Street, and the Kappas were there, and they had giving out stuff, and we ended up at Bethel Church. And a lot of the different women groups and some of the guys, we were there, and people could turn in there. We'd ask them, have you voted? Have you filled out the census yet? If not, we gave them the bags that they, with all the information, how they could even do it on their phone. And they had also, and we asked them if they wanted any food from the food bank. And some families took it and some families didn't. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do.
So there's something you mentioned that I didn't know until we actually just studied this last week. It was about the NAACP youth group actually doing training
Oh yes.
for it. So the paper that I read was someone who was talking about people thought that in the 60s that it was like spontaneous when the people in North Carolina went there to the sit-ins.
No.
They said no, it was going on through the South for the whole time. There was training, there was movement centers. So I guess how did the just kind of like how did the training go and how did they set it all up?
Well, here's the thing. Every NAACP group in the South had a youth group as well. Martin Luther King came to them, or other leaders that was with him, and they would come and meet with us and talk with us, but then we had to go through the training if you were going to participate.
That was real interesting to me, especially because considering now like I'm kind of